guess we'll just go ahead and get into it then. Hello everyone, my name is Bunny Garcia Owens. My pronouns are they, them. I am a network representative at the Mockingbird Society.
Hello everyone, my name is Miranda Hunter. I am an alumni and the CEO of Terra Sticker LLC. I'm here to support all these wonderful people coming to make a change for foster care and youth homelessness.
Welcome to Summit 2023. So lovely to see you all, and I'm excited to see what we have in store today. Thank you to all our young people who have joined together from across the state. Our advisor group's Office of Homeless Youth Advisory Committee, and the Commission on Children, Youth, and Foster Care. Thank you to our viewers and staff for your support.
Also, thank you to our sponsors, Coordinated Care, Office of Homeless Youth, Let me start that over. Thank you to our sponsors, Coordinated Care, Office of Homeless Youth housed in the Department of Commerce, Casey Families Programs, Smith D. Martin Consulting, Washington State Commission on Children and Foster Care, and Washington State Supreme Court, Washington State Department of Children, Youth, and Families. Today, we are here to finish off Phase 2 of the Advocacy Cycle Defining Solutions with our statewide chapters presenting their solution statements.
Now we will start with our statewide land acknowledgement. I invite everyone to pause, quiet, and reflect as we open with this acknowledgement. We would like to recognize that we are on the land of the Coast Salish, Interior Salish, and Yakima Nation tribes. They took care of this land before it was colonized, and they continue to care for, honor, and defend their land. We honor, with gratitude, the land itself and all of the native tribes of Washington State. We would also like to recognize the historical and systemic exploitation and oppression of indigenous peoples, enslaved Africans, and other historically underinvested people, which has led to the disproportionality in the representation of these communities among the youth we serve and whose voices we seek to elevate. I ask that we keep this in mind as we work to transform the systems that have and continue to impact us.
I will now go over our group agreements. Respect one another, be inclusive, assume best intentions, and address impact. One mic, one star. Confidentiality, focus on topic/agenda. Be safe, be sober, be present. Assist, support, accessibility needs. Respect pronouns and preferences. Practice professional language, refrain from cursing. Slurs are not tolerated. Ask questions to understand topics you do not understand.
And now I'll get into some housekeeping. Today's event is being live streamed. Any external member who may have policy-related questions that they may not have time to ask during the Q&A, or if you have any other questions and are not sure if it is an appropriate question to ask a young person or chapter, please reach out to our policy team who can assist you. Microphone speaking tips. Don't hide your face with the microphone. Keep it close to your mouth and pass it on to the next speaker. The live stream will only pick up what is spoken into the microphone. We also have translators for the event today to make this accessible for all. And with that in mind, please remember to talk slow and give time for translators to interpret. Also, feel free to take a water break or bathroom break during the presentations. We will have the full agenda, so please do what you need to take care of yourself while still being respectful to the presenters. We will also have a staff person at the door who will be supporting with letting you in and out of the room. ASL interpreters were confirmed for today, but unfortunately had to cancel. However, we hope to accommodate those with closed captioning in the live stream and visual aids incorporated through the program via PowerPoint presentation and the topic summary handouts.
Now, I would like to introduce our first Chicana Executive Director, Natalie Linte.
Wow, look at this beautiful room. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. I do want to acknowledge that we do have our ASL interpreters here. They joined us today, so thank you for being here. As was noted, my name is Natalie Lente, and I am the new Executive Director of the Mockingbird Society. I've been in this position for 8 months. I am the first executive of color in the history of the Mockingbird Society, and I do not take that lightly. Thank you. So I'm so excited to share in solidarity with our young advocates today. I'd like to start with a heartfelt welcome to our young people leading the way. Welcome Emily, Derek, Caitlin, Charisma, Nicholas, Shadiman, Myra, Abel, Elena, Beth, Rosemary, Isabel, Fabio, Bunny, Conifer, Mayana, Ariana, Lacey, Ender, Onyx, Lucas, Maya, Barrett, Tice, V, Caitlin, and Jasmine. I am honored and humbled that you have all accepted me into your communities to break bread, to chat over coffee, to laugh until our bellies hurt. You have trusted me with your stories of truth, that your strategies for change have elevated my own bar of excellence, and that you're here today to be visible and vocal to address the systems in play that are being moved through our conversations, through all of us. Please remember it's okay to be imperfect. Resist the dominant culture, systems, and structures which promote perfection. Perfection is an illusion. Please have grace for yourselves as advocates today. Your courage and resolve already fill this room. I see you. I see you. Would all of our young advocates please stand and be recognized? Thank you all. I would ask that our supporters today be mindful of our young people, that you acknowledge their courage, passion, wisdom, and vulnerability in all of your interactions with them. Please recognize that the problems and solutions that will be presented today are not yet intended to be fully fleshed out formal proposals, that today is an opportunity for all of us to provide an engaging, empowering, and loving experience for these new advocates, and that we are all being gifted by the perspectives that they bring. Welcome to the founder of the Mockingbird Society, whose guidance, support, love, and friendship have lifted and fueled my heart. Thank you. Welcome to the commissioners of the Washington State Commission on Foster Care and the Office of Homeless Youth. Your support and partnership with Mockingbird Youth and young adults across the state have been instrumental in driving change in our child welfare system and in leading towards ending youth homelessness. Welcome to the Campion and Rakes Foundations, to our community partners, to our sponsors, and to our online audience. Welcome to the Mockingbird Society Board President, whose faith in me shines brightly, who allows me a space to be authentically me and to safely rest in our affinity as fierce women of color. Now, some of you may be wondering why I haven't noted the names of our supporters as I welcomed you. This is intentional. This is because all of you, All of us have the power and privilege that has not been afforded our young people leading the way today. It is their names, their voices, their stories that should be lifted, not ours. I've also been asked to speak today on Mockingbird's challenges and successes since I was appointed to this role 8 months ago. First, I think it's important to acknowledge the lens through which I've led within every organization. I lead explicitly, though not exclusively, with race, because racial inequities persist in every system across the country, without exception. Advancing social justice requires addressing all areas of marginalization and understanding the interconnected nature of oppression. As local and regional government deepens its ability to eliminate racial inequities, it'll be better equipped to transform systems and institutions impacting other marginalized groups. Systems that are failing communities of color are failing all of us. When I took on this role on November 28th of 2022, I learned that Mockingbird, like many nonprofits across the state, had gone through enormous transition and flux throughout the pandemic. In 2022, the Mockingbird Society lost 23 staff to include its entire director's table. The majority of the staff present upon my arrival were a year or less in tenure. We had only 23 youth and young adults participating in our chapters across the state, compared to the hundreds of young advocates during the era of Mockingbird led by its founder. And the infrastructure of the organization had all but collapsed. I noticed deeply rooted silos across the organization and across the youth services system. I've spoken with many newly appointed executives of color across the state and recognized that many of them had entered similar situations. They expressed frustration and pain about now being responsible for the cleanup of organizations without an engaged and self-organizing network to support their efforts. Each leader being left to work alone within the constraints and limits of their own organization's resources and capacities. The approaches to change that preceded us were reactive and haphazard. We all recognized that our organizations were not leveraging knowledge and innovation from other sectors nearly enough. The structures of our organizations, campaigns, and coalitions weren't supporting the kind of experimentation and collaboration that we all need. In the face of these daunting challenges, we have all had to summon the courage to believe we are the ones we have been waiting for. One of the executives I spoke with asked me, who better than the matriarchs and patriarchs of our cultural communities to lead the change we want to see? We're being asked to believe in our inherent capacity, step into the unknown, and challenge deeply held assumptions. For most of us, that's radically disruptive and contrary to how we've organized ourselves to succeed within dominant culture. We have lived through decades of individualistic, linear organizing, which intends to reform society, but it falls back into the modeling of oppressive tendencies, which we claim to be pushing up against. Some of those tendencies are seeking to assert one right way or one right strategy. And so I ask, how do we turn our collective towards collaboration? An amazing mentor of mine said that justice is loving awareness in action. When we're not coming from a place of loving awareness for ourselves and others, the place we're coming from is othering. In navigating toward liberation, I've come to understand that my personal transformation is intrinsically tied to our collective liberation. I believe that centering relationships is one of the most important strategies in dismantling racism and systems of oppression. If we centered the dignity of every human, we would organize with the perspective that there is wisdom and experience and amazing stories in the communities we love. And instead of starting up new organizations, we would want to listen, support, collaborate, merge, and grow through fusion, not competition. We would understand that the strength of our movement is in the strength of our relationships, which could only be measured by their depth. Scaling up would mean going deeper, being more vulnerable, and more empathetic. And so within my first 8 months in this role, my focus has been to lead to the safety, belonging, and dignity of every human being within the Mockingbird Society, so that in turn, we can lead towards safe spaces to welcome our youth and young adults to lift their voices for change. I've prioritized a learning tour to meet as many community voices as possible to better inform my own vision and decision-making, because after all, individualism is a political concept, not a biological one. We as a species are tribal, we are stronger together, and our organizations should operate as a continuum of care, rather than the silos which represent the power-mongering inherent in white saviorism and ego-driven leadership practices. I made it clear that this first year of my tenure would be a year of internal reflection and healing for our staff and community of young people, that we would focus on the rebuilding of our infrastructure so that we would reimagine a future that resonates with our core values as an organization and as the human beings who make up this organization. In the last 8 months, we have been collectively focused on our organizational infrastructure needs by conducting compliance, operational, finance, and HR audits, investing in staff training, and reorienting our teams for collaboration, by defining expectations around personal and collective race equity and anti-racism work, and building in training and supports, collectively defining clear and specific performance measures, improving onboarding and orientation, and evaluating frameworks, tools, and team composition to bolster programmatic success. I've recognized that even prior to COVID, Mockingbird was operating at a limited capacity to effectively manage the complex work of transforming foster care and ending youth homelessness. Like many nonprofits and government agencies, work was structured to support individual champions, resulting in eventual burnout of champions and large gaps in infrastructure over time. In the next chapter, Mockingbird will be structured in service of balanced workloads for all staff to do great work. We will prioritize advocacy with accountability from an anti-racism lens and an uncompromising commitment to our values and belief this work can only be done in partnership with communities closest to the issues. I'm grateful to the Mockingbird staff, both past and present, who've accepted the call to action from our young people, who have asked us to represent and center those who are currently marginalized. My staff recognize and embrace the truth that we can't get to a new destination without changing who and how we are. And so we walk into the unknown together as we watch for new patterns, learn new practices, new ways of being, and we aim for new heights. Could the current staff of the Mockingbird Society please stand and be recognized? Thank you so much to our young advocates for allowing me this time today. I will close by welcoming some very special guests who have joined us from Japan through the International Foster Care Alliance, one of our key Mockingbird family partners, led by its founder and executive director, Miho Awazu. I think I see you out there. Hi, Miho. Miho is a longtime friend of the Mockingbird Society. The young people joining us today would like to take a few minutes to share some of their advocacy work to advance Japan's child welfare system. Please welcome them.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having us. IFCA stands for International Foster Care Alliance and is a non-profit organization dedicated to improving child welfare on a global scale through the collaboration of foster youth in Japan and the United States. We believe that foster youth are the experts who can share their experiences. We work with parents, foster youth who have aged out of care, and child welfare professionals to advocate for the youth voice. My name is Amu Yamamoto. I was born in Tokyo and I live in Shizuoka. We came to Seattle on July 28th. In Seattle, the weather is much nicer than Japan. I cannot speak English well, but will try my best. I think there is not enough support for parents in Japan. If I could change one thing, I would like to see more support for parents. When I say parents, not only biological parents, but also all people who have a parental role, including foster parents. I am an only child, and my mother raised me alone. My mother did her best to discipline me, using verbal abuse and even violence. My mom developed hearing difficulties, and she blamed me for it. I was taken into care when I was 15 years old. I could not stand when it was ended at just one word: abuse. After all my mother's efforts, it is the responsibility of the whole society to treat abuse. Who helped my mother? She decided to do it all alone because of society prejudice against single-parent families. After taken into care, I spent time in a foster home. But I felt that there were few foster parents who were also supported. I'd like to see more support for parents so that children can live happily. I hope the parents can live a happy and smiling life without passing their suffer on to their children. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Hi. Hello. My name is Norika. I think the problem is that young people are not connected to the support they need after leaving foster care. The number of aftercare services are few and limited, and there are regional gaps. But above all, I know many young people suffer because they don't know about services available to them. Youth can decide if they want to use the services, but they don't have rights to know. I hope that young people can be connected with the care and services they need. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Not really, but. Thank you so much, Natalie, and the International Foster Care Alliance for your words. Now to hand the mic over for opening remarks to Justice Barbara Madsen from the Commission, and then opening remarks from Rodney Robinson from the Office of Homeless Youth.
Thank you very much. I'm Barbara Madsen, and I co-chair the Commission on Children in Foster Care that was ordered by the Supreme Court many years ago, and my co-chair is the DCYF director, Ross Hunter, and he's here today too. We are so thrilled to be back in person. I walked in from the back of the hotel, and just the vibe was energizing. It's just great to see all of you, and I know it's part of it is nervous energy. I have some of that too. You're speaking to a lot of people who care in this room, but they also are people with a lot of power. I know they listen to you because I know I listen to you. I've been coming to this forum for quite a few years, and I wasn't sure how many actual successes that Mockingbird youth have had, but I looked it up on your website. And it is 56 law changes or policy changes. That is really impressive, and you've only been in existence since 2000, so that is even more impressive. Every year after the summit, the commission gets together, the members of the commission get together, and we then debrief on the recommendations and strategies that you propose. So we are taking you very seriously, and I can't wait to hear the proposals this year. My very able assistant on the commission said, you should say what's most exciting to you that the Youth Summit is looking at and has done. And I would have to say it is engaging youth voice. I mean, it is really critical, and how long has it taken us to get here? I'm very excited about what you've done to promote youth voice in the legislature. On our commission, we have youth voice, but we'd really like to pay them too. So it's very exciting, and I think everything flows from hearing from the people who are affected about the system that is making so many important decisions for their lives. And that includes the courts and the department and a lot of the folks at the table here. Can't wait to hear from you. I'm excited. You are amazing to get up in front of all of these people. It's tough, but I know with preparation and excitement that you will really give us a lot to think about and take action on in the fall. Thank you for having us.
Adjust the mic. Can you pull it back?
They had to raise the mic up for me. First off, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Mockingbird's Leadership Summit. They told me that I had 2 minutes, but I won't take that long since I found out you can't curse in your speech. So definitely want to make this short and concise. I think it's incredibly important that we as professionals, those with professional privilege, lean into our real job at this summit. Our job is to put action and activation to what our young people are telling us they need. There is no one better to hear from on how to solve these issues than the young people who experience it themselves. Our job is to be an active listener, a full participant, and make sure that we allow space for these young people after this meeting is done, when they're seeking us out as individuals and they're asking us the hard questions on how we're going to make these things work in our communities. It is important to us to be there, to listen, to understand, and make time for these young people. So again, I just want to give it up to all of our young adult leaders. I appreciate the time and the effort that you spent to prepare yourselves to come up here so you can speak clearly, concisely, and be confident in your message. And I just want to applaud you for that. No curse words. I did it.
Great remarks from our advisors. Now we're going to have a presentation from our statewide chapters, followed by a 10-minute Q&A session between our advisors and chapter members. Facilitating the Q&A session will be Charles Smith, who is our new Public Policy Director, and Sharon Kerr, who is our Youth Programs Director. But first, from the 206 Seattle chapter covering King County, presenting their proposed issue and solution.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming out here. My name's Lacey Morgan. I'm a King County chapter leader with the Mockingbird Society. My pronouns are she and her. I have experience in the foster care system and have experience as a homeless youth.
My name is Maya Rivas. I use she, her pronouns. I am a King County chapter member of the Mockingbird Society. I have lived experience in foster care, and I have navigated being unhoused.
The problem we are presenting today is the complaint process in the foster care system. You may have heard of this process called the Ombuds process. This is an online portal where a foster youth can submit complaints about anything. In 2021 to 2022, OFCO completed 815 complaints regarding 1,209 children. Most of these complaints were regarding children under the age of 9 who may not know about this process or be able to use this to advocate for themselves. The top issue were involving the conduct of DCYF and other agency services, followed by separation and reunification. The issue is we do have portals, we do have processes, and yet a lot of people do not know about them, or the system does not function the way they are meant to. Not everyone likes their social worker, not everyone likes their placement, not everyone knows how to request for a new attorney or even ask for some extra help.
The issue we're addressing today includes the need for consistent, trusted, reliable supports for youth experiencing foster care. Unfortunately, other resources do not always meet that need. We will be proposing achieving more supports through quarterly connections with the aforementioned organizations and agencies.
A key goal of this is to create a peer-to-peer program. This is similar to the Parents for Parents program. This program is a lived experience job position that would have youth in their corner. This person has gone through the hoops in the foster care system and helps the youth navigate to success. The Parents program that inspires this shows positive outcome for families. It helps people understand how to get help, increases trust in CPS, and belief in the court supporting reunification. 70% of parents who participated in Dependency 101 to reunited with their children. This would not only be great for the youth, but also create amazing job opportunities for foster youth exiting foster care. Also, what's cool about this is the youth wouldn't be able to decide who they want to hire on. The youth would be able to come up with a set of questions and interview about 3 to 4 peers and pick who they want on their team. This would be an amazing advocate person for youth, a mentor, a teacher, or even call it a friend. We would love to see this happen. We would love to create a partnership with the Ombuds Association, DCYF. In doing so, we would like to propose some sort of schedule to meet quarterly or have a work group to be able to talk about the foster youth needs being met and bring in those lived experts.
Freedom for the youth to pick whichever peer support best fits their needs, whether cultural, ethnic, shared experience, or otherwise, is an important step in a youth's independent choice in their continuum of care, especially because workers and case managers are assigned individuals that often do not meet those needs. A lived experience individual will be able to better understand the needs, struggles, and disparities of those who have experienced foster care better than those who have not. Empathy and being understood is a vital part of maintaining a supportive community of trusted individuals. Young adults need a healthy support system that they can trust to grow, heal, and feel safe. The importance of having consistent support from a trusted, trained adult cannot be ignored. The developing brain needs to be able to make these valuable connections to form a strong, stable foundation, especially if that brain has experienced trauma. We cannot keep failing to address that these young people need help advocating for themselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Seattle chapter. So now we'll be moving into the Q&A session, which will be facilitated by myself and Charles. So how this will work is we have 2 wireless mics right here. So if you could raise your hand, or if your question is better on a note card, you can put it on a note card as well. And we'll walk around and we'll hand you the mic, and then we may have to walk the mic back to our youth and young adults as well. So we have our first question over here.
Thank you. I love this topic. And I'm going to call out and call in a few people here today. Jeffrey Adams from Oklahoma, Sabian Hart, who is also a lived expert, and Jim Theophilus. We were having this conversation right before you guys started today. I am in full support. I think this should happen yesterday. I would love to have more conversations about what that looks like, who would house it, where the funding would come from. And there's nothing better than a lived expert. So I applaud you. Thank you.
Is there a question in there, Tonya? No.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you so much. Well, I'm with Tanya. I love this idea. I wonder, though, if you could say a little more about the quarterly meetings. I think I kind of lost what that is and how that relates to the interviews of 3 peers, which I think is such a great idea, too. So that would be wonderful if you could just clarify that a bit.
I can come up for this because it's a little awkward. Yeah, so the quarterly meetings is the hope for the chapters to have these consistent check-in points with ombuds, with DCYF, with any other stakeholders who are like, yeah, we're in on this, so we can start to work in a group and really brainstorm out some of those questions about, like, what would our funding process look like? Who would be in charge? How are we going to be reaching out to alumni to even start, like, getting that, like, feelers out? And so just having that consistent connection between organizations to be sure that we're on the same page and we're not kind of repeating the cycles of, like, struggling with implementation and losing those conversation pieces, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Oh, do you want me to ask it? Oh, sorry. Thank you first for that presentation. You all did fantastic. My question for you is, in the work that you were doing to develop this program, have you come across any other models in either other states or other countries where you have seen this model work that Washington could potentially look to get best practices?
Thank you so much for asking. We actually don't have any particular models off of the top of our head right now that I could give you to reference, but we can connect you with our PP&A team. There's been a few different, long-winded answer, a few different thoughts around. And Charles?
I can answer that question. So we have P4P. So Tanya McClanahan, we will be wanting to meet with P4P. Because there's already a framework in place, and Parent for Parent has been instrumental in navigating parents through the dependency process. So we will want to mirror that program so that our young people are feeling supported and they have that same advocacy. So yes, there is a program in place. Go here. Here we go.
I was just curious. I love the fact that you're talking about peers supporting peers. I'm also curious, have you had conversations about what it would look like to create clearer pathways for young people to become a part of the ombudsman and become guardian ad litems? I think it's important to have representation across the system. So I'm just curious, have you talked about the potential to create a clear pathway, maybe an apprenticeship program, some type of way to talk about how young people can basically get paid to participate in this level of advocacy?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. Definitely, our hope is to create like more paid positions like this peer-to-peer support and gain those opportunities for young people. I think that that's definitely something that like we should do some more research into, like the technical process of getting involved with some of the formal processes like this. But I think that our goal as a chapter coming together was to try to create like just more support and more connections for young people in foster care, kind of like our Mockingbird family model. The idea like we do have some of these processes and already like individuals we can go to, but we want there to be a full connection of support for young people in place, and trying to think more of that vein, if that answers your question. Thank you.
Oh, Rodney beat me to the punchline.
Okay.
Charles Smith.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. This is great to be here and great presentation. So I was surprised to hear that you mentioned that the most of the complaints were by youth under 9, and I was wondering with this foster parent or foster to foster youth peer-to-peer group, how, if you've thought about how that might be different for foster youth who are young, under 9, versus older foster youth, and maybe just talk a little bit, if you could maybe also talk a little bit more about that 9, and if there's anything that you have noticed is a key age that things would be under 9 or over 9, if there's anything happening around that age that you think relates to the complaints or a change in how peer-to-peer might work.
Hi, yeah, that's a great question. I was actually thinking about that myself, if that question was going to come up. We really don't know that answer right now, just to be completely honest, but we can look into that, and it is a thing to think of, like, you know, we think of, like, young adults being like, oh, maybe at age 16 or 15 would be great for, a young adult who just exited, but that is true. What about that age difference? So that's definitely something that we would have to come back and look into.
I want to add that part of the framework would also be, to Rodney's point, we will want to incorporate CASA, because CASA, obviously, they represent best interest. So we will want to have a relationship with CASA so that they would be informed. We would also want to have that relationship with DCYF. So there are some frameworks, but great question. Thank you.
And there's one.
Okay. Representative Sen, the reason that a huge fraction of the complaints are about children under 9 is because a huge fraction of the children in foster care are under 9, right? I mean, just sort of think about, like, that's just a lot of really littles. So there's a lot of complaints about those cases. I would be my guess, so. Also, they're not so good at typing on websites.
Hi, great job, you guys. Not a question, but more of a recommendation. We had done something similar to this when I was at the YMCA Social Impact Center in our Arcadia Youth Shelter. So we served young people 17 to 12. And what we saw was we were able to secure funding through behavioral health. That actually paid for the peer support positions. And then we also had the peer support positions. Young people had the ability to pick their peer support person and be tied to them. They also had the ability to evaluate whether or not that relationship was continuously working. But we also ensured that their peer support person was at every RAP team meeting or every meeting with parents when we talked about, reunification and going down that path, or what does that look like, or next steps. And then we also integrated their peer support into their safety or success plans as well. And so we saw, it was like night and day difference of really being able to tap in to somebody who can really see you and feel you. And so I would just recommend tapping in either to the behavioral health department in the YMCA Greater Seattle or their social impact center in general, because they do have, on a smaller scale, they do have something that is similar.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just a really quick time check. We have about 2 more minutes, so I think we can take 2 more questions or thoughts. And then if there's any other thoughts and questions, please write them down on a note card, and then we can collect those.
Thank you. Yeah, I also love this issue. And I will say that while it's true that most of the young people, children in care, are younger, we also know that adolescents have more access to the website. They have more access to complaining, or at least letting their needs known. And I think it's important to pay attention to, I think many have lost trust in the system by the time they're adolescents, multiple placements, changes in schools. And so they typically opt out. They run away, or they do not engage in a system that they've come to not trust. So I think this could also be a strategy to keep young people engaged in a way that parents who have their children at home are always looking for ways to keep them engaged, as opposed to having them opt out. And so I think it's actually a sad thing to me that most of the complaints are about children, because that tells me the adolescents do not know how to do this, or they're not trusting, even if they did do it, they would get a healthy response. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. And
Thank you.
with that, we are at time for the question and answer for the Seattle chapter. So if you have any other questions or thoughts that you would like the Seattle chapter to answer or our policy team to answer, please write them down and we can come around and collect those and then connect with you via email. Yeah, okay. Thank you, Seattle chapter. Yeah.
Good job.
Sorry. Okay. Thank you so much, Seattle chapter, for your presentation. And the next chapter that we'll be presenting is the YA chapter, Youth Advocates Ending Homelessness, located in King County. Thank you.
Hi. Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming. My name is Lucas. I'm 23 years old, and I identify as non-binary and serve as the chapter leader for the Youth Advocates Ending Homelessness. I'm also here today in honor of my street brother Damon, who lost his battle with his mental health due to lack of access to crisis care. For several years, I experienced personal struggles such as mental health issues, structural failures, and less than useful public policy. There is no way to quantify the value of mental health stability, but 50% of all lifetime mental illness begins by age 14 and 75% by the age of 24. Currently, the failure to access mental health resources are plaguing our young people and hindering their future and their futures of our community. Additionally, the first mental health crisis is the most dangerous because we don't have any experience or haven't been taught appropriate coping skills. What we are asking for is increased mental health funding, and especially in statewide crisis centers. In the past, our limited crisis centers were always full, and I consistently found myself placed on a harmful lockdown unit. This led to a distressing cycle of moving in and out of hospitals, each time requiring assessment by a licensed social worker, which could take up to 3 days if you're lucky. Lockdown units exacerbated the situation and made everything worse. During my crisis, my struggles weren't confined to just a few days, and they could fluctuate in intensity, sometimes triggered by something as simple as dropping food. It was difficult to cope with the reoccurring thoughts of self-harm, which required immediate attention and intervention. In Washington, the scarcity of crisis centers is concerning, especially the absence of one dedicated specifically to young adults. Such a crisis center is essential for various reasons, as approximately 50% of those experiencing their first mental health crisis fall within this age group. Young adults face unique challenges, much like those in the unhoused community, resulting in generational trauma. Many young people have not had the same opportunity to learn and reach markers that society has deemed necessary for self-sufficiency. This is a clear indication on the failure of our community to uplift our future, as opposed to the infamous pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. What if we were never taught or given our bootstraps in the first place? Unlike older adults who may have their own mental health struggles, This trauma can compound the struggles experienced by young adults. Additionally, scientific research indicates that young adults' brains are still developing until at least age 25, and they don't fit neatly into either adolescent or adult categories, leading to different needs, wants, and interests. A crisis center designed specifically for young adults is necessary to address these complexities and provide appropriate support. Washington State needs to increase funding for mental health supports, especially aimed at young adults who are or may experience crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucas. So we'll now be beginning the Q&A session for the Yeah chapter topic.
What would a successful youth crisis center look like for you? I ask that because some of them are people don't want to go, right? So what does that look like for you?
So I'm kind of modeling my idea around the idea of DESC's Crisis Solution Center in King County, but with the age range of 18 to 25. Accepting voluntary patients willing to go, needing help, and just that extra support around that. This facility wouldn't be able to probably take like ITA patients or people not willing to get the help they need.
Thank you for answering the question.
Thank you very much for your courage coming up here and talking about this, and I am terribly sorry for your loss. This subject is incredibly important, and I'm so glad that you are talking about it. Just as you said, youth accessing traditionally adult systems like coordinated entry or even shelters is a very scary and unsafe situation. And it does more to block youth than it does to accept them and embrace them. What level of education or what portion of the funding would you consider putting towards educating youth in accessing these kinds of services or in creating even crisis lines as entry points?
One of the ideas that I had was partnering a social worker with an outreach, or like all of the outreach teams, like Youth Care that does outreach, Teen Feed, to go out with them and let the social worker who knows how the system runs and knows how everything runs explain to the youth what they can do to get this help that they need.
And then we have one over here.
Thank you. I know the voters in King County just approved funding for a youth mental health facility. I think it's a little different than what you're envisioning, though, because I think it also handles ITA, but I'm embarrassed that I don't have all the details of it in my head.
You're good. So we did a lot of look into Proposition Levy 1. And they are opening 5 crisis centers, and not one of them is young adults. When they refer to youth, it is under 18. So we still don't have young adult voice going into this.
That's a good answer.
Deep gratitude for your voice today in this space and putting and reminding us the realities of our current systems and the lack thereof and the gaps that exist and the losses that are happening every day because of it. So I'm deeply grateful for that. My question, I guess, around, I really appreciate the age range, the 18 to 25 and a crisis center, where in the continuum and what comes next after the crisis? Is there, I think there's also gaps in services there, but what is the ideal environment and support that you're looking at, both getting into crisis, but also the next step to try to, break a cycle?
So that's why we're asking for a general increase in funding as well, but also to include this crisis center funding, because a large majority of what is happening right now is we're put into crisis care or into a lockdown unit or whatnot, and we get one follow-up appointment with whatever organization that social worker can find, and then we're once again all back on our own. So part of this funding would be connecting with like Ryther or the YMCA that already does young adult focused, to give them more funding, also open up other places because there's so few.
Could you see this happening on sort of the residential neighborhood? So if there was a house in each neighborhood, I mean, the center doesn't have to have 40 people. It could have 5 at each location or something of that nature.
Yeah, no, honestly, actually, more smaller facilities is better. It allows the staff to pay closer attention and give the individualized treatment that people need.
Thank you, Larry. Any other question?
Thank you. My mind goes to young adult shelters that exist now and are coming on board, and just imagining how these could be paired together. To your point of what's next. I think that's what you. Yeah. Sorry. Pairing with young adult shelters. So I'm just imagining that. That's all. I guess it's not really a question so much as maybe you were probably already thinking about that.
Yeah, I was, and that's a big issue because shelters aren't equipped to deal with clients with mental health issues. So oftentimes they ship us off to the ER or whatnot.
So I do have a question, not to monopolize the mic, but I was just thinking about, perhaps using some of this funding to provide the training for workers in the shelter system to provide adequate, we're even struggling with trauma-informed care within the adult system. I can't imagine what youth experience.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely, definitely needed. I think we as youth tend to forget that the frontline staff workers are also involved in this battle, and they are not getting the things that they need to help us either.
Thank you again. Thank you so much for this issue. I think part of it is we need a mindset change from looking at going into treatment as the be-all and end-all, as opposed to the beginning of the journey to exit the system, to manage our mental health and behavioral health, and not to do a commercial, but some of the young people in Mockingbird have partnered with North Star on a program called The Bridge that we sponsor, to really even not call it discharge planning, but return to community planning, which implies relationships, it implies resources, but it also means that the young person is customizing their plan. Where would you live? Where would you be safe and healthy? And what's it take to create that? So we'd love to have some conversation with you. And again, Mockingbird, Natalie, and Charles and I have talked about how we can partner on this. But the system sort of says, to Representative Callan's point, okay, they're in treatment. We're done. Rather than, this is the beginning. And it's also what we know is often an off-ramp of homelessness, when young people are stable and on meds, and or any of us, not just young people, but then we can reconcile with family and community. I don't think we honor the courage it takes to go inpatient treatment. We have no 18 to 25-year-old inpatient programs that's culturally or developmentally responsive in this state. So we're really missing that opportunity to support the courage that young people show by taking care of their health.
So that is time. So again, if you have any specific questions or comments or thoughts around this chapter, please go ahead and write that down on a note paper. And I'm going to walk around now to collect them for the first two presentations that just happened as we transition. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right on with you.
Thank you. All right. Sorry. Thank you, Youth Advocates Ending Homelessness. Next, I would like the Eastern chapter, which includes Spokane, Whitman, Lincoln, Columbia, and Stephen counties to come.
Sorry, we got to set up some stuff real quick. Alrighty. Well, thank you all so much for attending and being here. It means so much. I know that's already been said, but just wanted to reiterate. So I'm Mayana. All of our group uses she, her pronouns. We are the Eastern region of the Mockingbird Society. And then we just had a little icebreaker type thing. So the amount of time that I've personally been in Mockingbird, I think has been like a year and a half-ish.
Hello, everyone. My name is Caitlin Wallen, and I have been with Mockingbird for about 3 years now.
Hi, guys. I'm Jasmine Wallen, and I've been with Mockingbird on and off for about 2 years now.
Hello, my name is Shadiman. I've been with Mockingbird for about several weeks now, so I'm fairly new to the organization, but we joined with the Youth Action Board, also known as the YAB. So we are also advocates for ending like homelessness and things like that. So I'm excited to be a part of this organization of dedicated advocates. So yeah, thank you. And I'm just helping out the Eastern chapter today with their presentation. But before we begin the presentation, I just wanted to say a disclaimer. So throughout the course of this presentation, we will ask the audience a series of 3 questions, and if you relate or if it applies to you, we ask that you raise your hand. We want to garner participation if you feel comfortable doing so. So if you don't, that's fine. If you do, awesome. So thank you for that.
Okay, so to get right into it, our problem statement is that school districts across Washington state are experiencing underfunding and a lack of prioritizing youth voice in those funds, which often results in a lack of programs offered in the school districts. This is especially noticeable in low-income school districts, and BIPOC students are usually impacted the most by this, and all of that contributes to the achievement gap, which, of course, we don't want. Youth voices are rarely included in school decisions, despite them being the most impacted by these funding decisions. So that needs to change. And also, really quick, the first question we have for the audience today. If you relate with it, raise your hand. Do you produce earwax?
Awesome. Okay. So, alrighty. So we have a few excerpts from people's educational experiences that we would like to share. Jasmine and I will only be relaying about one excerpt. The rest of them We won't read for the sake of time, but they will be at the end of the presentation if you guys want to read through the rest of the excerpts. So, yeah, I'll pass it to Jasmine.
Sorry, I'm really nervous anyway. All right, so I will be reading the fourth one on the screen. It is from someone who attended Seattle Public Schools. They say that they were not able to learn ASL as someone with progressive hearing loss, and all of their education was self-funded or online for that. And they go on to say that they were comparing a place everyone wanted to go to that advertised a lot of resources like Roosevelt High to schools with more black students like Garfield. The entire language around it was so rooted in race and class.
Alrighty. And then the excerpt I will be reading is the third bullet point. It reads, however, my school's lack of AP courses put me at a disadvantage compared to my high school counterparts who attended wealthier schools. They had more opportunities and were better prepared when it came to take the SATs and ACTs for college acceptance. And it made the college admissions process even more challenging for me. So that was an excerpt from a student. Like I said before, the rest of them will be at the end of the slide presentation. Thank you.
We are now on to our second question. It is more of a would you rather. So our would you rather is, would you rather fly or would you rather be invisible? So if you would rather fly, please raise your hand. Oh, interesting. And if you'd rather be invisible, will you please raise your hand?
You can do both if you want.
It's kind of sus. I don't see any hands going up.
Alrighty.
All right, so next we move on to our research and data, just some things we've come across while considering our problem statement. Yeah, so first we'll talk about the very controversial McCleary versus Washington. We love that one. So basically, for those of you that don't know, there was a 2012 court ruling and it basically ruled that the state constitution requires the state to pay for all basic education costs, and they kind of weren't. So too many school districts were instead covering basic education costs using levy tax money, and we will go on to explain what levies are and all of that.
Stick rod on up. Oh my God, you're good. So we have a couple more like little definitions. So the first one, it's going to be on the screen. I'm just going to read it. So if you want to read along, because of differences because of differences in property values, some districts can pass a levy with a levy tax rate of 57 cents and raise $2,563 per student, while other districts can pass a levy rate of $1.50, which is like 3 times the amount, and raise only $83 per student. So to compensate for that difference in the ability to raise money through local levies, the state supplements districts with higher than average levy tax rates by providing additional funding called local effort assistance, or LEA. And then you've heard the word a lot, so we just have a definition for the levies as well, because that's important. So levies are basically a short-term local property tax passed by voters of a school district that generates tax revenue for local school districts. All money generated by school district levies goes directly to the school district to pay for enhancements to the state-funded basic education.
So next, we'll be talking about that lovely little graph you see right there. So when schools do get money, you kind of got to wonder, who does that money go through? So we have a lovely graph right there that tells you. It goes through the superintendent of public instruction, federal agencies, local taxpayers, and the local school district. You can also see when their transactions occur if you squint really good. So we did look into that. That is something we are looking into. And to go with that, we are aware of Inslee's proposed 2023 to 2025 school budget of approximately $575 million. We are aware that it will be going to special education supports. capacity and cultural competency of Washington educators, educational strategies to accelerate student learning and engagement. We are aware of that. Now, keeping that in mind, we will move on to our next thing. So there's this lovely little statistic, again, going to show basically how much money you get kind of depends on how many students are in the school. So in Washington State, funding for school support staff is based on the number of students in schools. So for example, in a school with 5,000 to 7,000 students, you would get funding for a full-time nurse. If you come across a school with only 150 students, you don't even get the funding for a full-time nurse. So I'm just going to leave that right there.
And now we have our third question, which I did not bring up here, so I'm going to wing it. Would you guys please raise your hand if you felt like your voice was not included in your school district's decisions when it came to the courses that you were offered? Wow, that's like everyone. Can you just look around at that, please? Okay, thank you. And on to our solution. We want youth voices to be included when working with school districts and educational service districts regarding decisions around funding and the programs being offered. Highline School used focus groups which included stakeholders, community members, and parents to determine best uses of funds from COVID responses, yet youth voices weren't included. If focus groups can be used, then why not have one where youth are included, as they will be the most impacted?
We'd also like the government to oversee how schools spend the funds and hold districts and ESDs accountable for the decisions and priorities that they choose. Maybe provide a little more uniformity based on what students actually need and want.
Mic drop right there. And then also, going hand in hand with that, more funding and better practice of how that funding is allocated would always be nice, because let's be honest, most of the time it's not very great. And we want to work with a variety of people, but especially NAACP and the Teton Science Schools, who already are kind of focusing on these issues. So we want to see if we can partner with them to see what we can do.
And with that, we'd like to thank you all, but we'd also really like to thank Taylor Cooper, as well as Eddie in the back, all the way in the corner, our interim EC. We appreciate you guys and all your support and all you do for us.
Okay, so now we will be starting the Q&A session for the Eastern Chapter's topic.
Thank you guys for your focus on education. In my own district, I didn't realize that there weren't students on all the school boards, and there are students on some of the school boards. And I'm wondering if you guys have explored that, if you know in your own local community, school districts, if there are youth representatives on your school boards, and if that would be of something of interest to try and expand that.
To be honest, that's a really good question. I don't know if anyone in my group has another answer. I know the high school I went to, I don't know if other high schools did it or not because I only went to that one high school, but we had a program called ASB, which is basically like having students help out with like secretary stuff. And I was never on the ASB. I think it was to do with like each grade's, not like funding, but like how certain aspects of how that funding was used, but like to a very small degree. So like how they wanted to do we have like a homecoming parade every time. So like, what they wanted to make with that and stuff like that. So I don't think it was really any like big important decisions, but yeah, I mean, that's a really good idea. Like, I think that that's definitely something we could look into, because like that is very important.
We do definitely plan to meet with some schools. That is a great idea. I have, from my lived experience, been in school districts with and without. So that's all I have to say. Does anybody else have anything to say? All right.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, I'll go over here.
Thank you so much. That was a really informative presentation, and I have a lot of respect and admiration for you to take on school funding issues, because my understanding is that it's complicated. So, yeah, kudos to you. I wonder, since you did mention you had some experience with and without student voice, young people's voice, can you say anything about what might have worked and what didn't?
Can you repeat that one more time, please?
Well, I was just thinking, because you mentioned you'd been involved in situations where there has been a voice of young people and where it hasn't, are there things that you would say, oh, that was really great how that worked, or boy, this didn't work, we wouldn't want to repeat that?
So my answer to that, in the school districts that I have been in with student voice, the decisions kind of, how am I trying to, what's the word this? With the decisions that students were allowed to make, it had more to do with what my chapter member Mayana was saying. It had more to do with yearbook and things like that. When it comes down to funding and classes offered, that wasn't really made available to youth voice. That was not asked for youth to speak on. So I think I answered.
I had a question on for extracurricular activities and even AP courses, SATs and ACTs, the cost associated with those, even in the schools that do have more money per student, so to say. Have you had done any thinking about that impact, like resources for? I don't know. I'm really passionate about extracurricular activities, and I've really wanted to build a program that would it would be like a scholarship program for anybody who has any of those costs, just to pay for it so they don't have to worry about it. And so I think that these two things, it sounds similar. Like, does my question make sense? Have you done any thinking about an ASB card costs an amount of money, and that's just to even join any clubs of any kind, even ones that don't have other associated costs? I don't know.
I think I might be able to speak on my own personal experience taking AP courses, if that's kind of what your question revolves around. So I'm currently a college student, and I don't have any of those credits for those college level courses that I took because my family was not able to afford to pay for me to get the credit for those, which was, I feel, a common experience for all of us. I don't know if that answers your question, though.
Yeah, it's a huge missing resource.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll go over there and then over here. And then we have about 4 minutes on time check.
Do you have any ideas on the sort of protections you would put in place to avoid tokenism and to ensure a diversity of student voices?
I honestly don't think we've really thought about that. This is only like a little baby of an idea. She's not grown yet.
I have an idea. Maybe, because, a lot of different organizations and companies have diversity and inclusion trainings and diversity and inclusion councils. So I think maybe school boards can make that, or like formulate a diversity and inclusion council to see just like how different representations of different cultures and people can make students' experiences better in school. So maybe just having that counsel and, yeah, that's it. Counsel.
I just really want to congratulate you on this idea. I think it's wonderful. And for instance, in my own life, I basically was flunking out of the 7th grade. And so I went to an alternative school. It was partially funded by the Grateful Dead. For those of you don't know who the Grateful Dead is, they're a band.
Now you know.
Yes. And so this school had one person, one vote. And so that meant for the interview process, it went through the students, for the students and for the staff. Also, we picked our own classes. And so we had to know about the state requirements so that certain classes had to be done. So I'm just encouraging you to do, since I went through it already, this is certainly an idea that can be done. Thanks for your idea.
Larry, can we get your commitment to meet with us and we can further discuss? Thank you.
I have a suggestion and an offer. You got Representative Sen interested in getting youth voice on school boards, and she can make that happen. She's got juice. Okay? Juice. It's a technical word in politics. I have an offer, too, which is if you want to consult on how that funding formula works, I'd be happy to talk to you because I wrote it. Long time ago. Right, she made me. Seriously, I'm happy to meet with you and talk to you about it.
Thank you, Ross.
Thank you.
So you had the juice too. That's what I heard. Not a question, but a resource. Equity in Education Coalition just launched a paid opportunity for young people that have either just recently gone through the K through 12 education system or are currently still in it, to actually tackle on some of the work that you're proposing, specifically as it pertains to different class offerings and different class topics. So after this, I can forward that to you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. One more question.
And this is also more of an offer, although I'm not sure I should offer her up. But Veronica Gallardo is our OSPI representative on the Commission on Children in Foster Care. And I imagine she's probably attending remotely, but we can definitely connect you up with her as well.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, please.
Thank you. So that concludes the Q&A session for the Eastern chapter. Again,
Great job. Great job, my friend. Great job.
so once again, I'll walk around and collect any note cards that for any unanswered questions or thoughts.
Thank you so much, Asian chapter. Up next is the Tacoma chapter.
Hello, we are the Tacoma chapter. I am Isabel. I use she, her pronouns.
My name's Emily. I use she, her pronouns as well.
My name's Elena. I use she, her pronouns as well.
My name is Rosemary. I also use she, her pronouns.
I'm V. I go by they, them. Sorry, I got nervous for a second. And sorry to take up like 20 seconds. To Lucas's point about how our struggles, trauma, pain doesn't end after exiting a system of care. Imagine during your workday, right? You come home, you're stressed. Does that stress end immediately? No. So. Yeah. So for our members that aren't presenting, I want to credit their efforts as well. Elena, Isabel, and Nicholas, you're awesome. And we can't forget Nicholas, Karen, and Charles, who are three of the driving forces behind Mockingbird. Thank you. With that, we're here to address a pressing issue. the barriers that exist to the homes in our state and across our country. In Washington state, we wonder why we're trapped in a vicious cycle of homelessness and housing instability.
The main problem with our housing is, the main problem we're hoping to address is that landlords continuously increase the amount that a person has to pay to have a home while they focus on personal profits over the person seeking housing, ignoring that residents need support in and out of the home that they can't afford due to the prices of that housing. This issue is exacerbated not just through the rent that they're increasing every year, but through pet fees, income requirements are double or triple the rent, harsh credit requirements that take years to perfect or build, and countless other fees related to keeping a home, especially those that require a deposit up front. Those expenses limit those residents from being able to seek and pay for supports like case management, therapy, and medical intervention to physical and mental health issues, all worsened by the fact that these fees may or may not be refunded at all. Not to mention that oftentimes the application of these costs is dependent on the landlord's personal decision, a personal decision that very often does not favor youth with low to no rental history, who could be considered more of a financial risk, or marginalized communities that for whatever racist, sexist, or otherwise problematic reason, the landlord does not personally trust. Around our entire country, you can find financially insecure families and individuals who are without a home, not because they can't afford to rent one, but because the cost of moving in is so high that despite being able to afford the rent, they can't afford to take the place as a new renter. We have our solution with V.
Awesome, thank you. So, the Tacoma chapter wants to spearhead a work group dedicated to improving and expanding on youth and young adult master leases in Washington state. Young people deserve master leases because these arrangements grant them the perfect blend of independence and rental experience, all while ensuring they receive the necessary supportive supports and quality of care. Young people are confronted with the daunting barriers when it comes to secured housing, as they have to deal with extra fees, no rental or credit history, and high minimum income requirements. There are so many more, sadly, but we will end it right there. These barriers become roadblocks, leaving them stranded and vulnerable, deprived of a stable home, and at the mercy of an unforgiving housing system. So the definition of master leases, you're welcome to reference over there. I will also read it off to you. So, one second. All right, I will read it on there. And right there, okay. The master lease is a type of lease that gives the leasee the right to control and sublease the property during a lease, while the owner retains the legal title. In this case, a housing authority or service provider would be the leasee, allowing them to sublease the property to young people. So, to speak personally about the benefits of master leasing, we have here a awesome young person who've gained and maintained secure and stable housing through a master lease agreement.
Thank you. All right, so here's just one way it could look. It can look like a lot of things, but this is what it looked like for me. So an old Victorian style house that was renovated into 6 full separate 1-bedroom units, all for young people, 18 to 24 years old, all with supportive services attached. We call it Pfeiffer House. On July 22nd, I celebrated 2 years of living there, and I can confidently say I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for this experience. Thank you. Previously, I was living in a fifth wheel with no running water or heat, struggling to flee domestic violence. Basically, that prioritized me into categories 1 and 4 of homelessness. I can go more into that in the Q&A if there are some people that don't know what that is. Those categories are. And there are also plenty of different categories that contradict each other's HUDs versus liaisons, McKinney-Vento, all that. At that time, I had no stable income, no rental history, or at least real rental history with an actual lease, poor credit, not no credit, poor credit, and no support system other than my emotional support pit bull who's in the back, and that alone, just with the breed, had its own barriers. After 2 long years of working with providers to solidify funding, searching for rentals, reaching out to landlords, and ultimately getting denied, I felt discouraged, tired, and angry. Living in survival mode for so long drastically affected all areas of my wellness to the point where I even considered inpatient treatment, whatever that looked like, because it was just like becoming way too much. My last hope was a referral to this young adult housing program that used a master lease to make it easier for young renters. From the start, my landlord and owner of the program met me where I was, physically and metaphorically. For example, I lived 45 minutes out of town. She drove out there to do my initial lease signing because I had no means of transportation. Sorry, I lost my place. There we go. I wasn't subjected to additional fees, income requirements, or even a credit check. She didn't require rental history, and she didn't stigmatize me or my dog. Once I got my keys and signed the lease, I expected to be all on my own. However, the support didn't end. My landlord has regularly checked up on me and supported me in my short and long-term goals. I've been connected to various support services, including, but not limited to, free, individualized, and quality access to mental health care, including therapy, financial counseling, independent living skill workshops, and more. The support given not only helped me obtain permanent stable housing, independent housing as well, but also help me maintain, prevent deterioration, continue to grow, and help others flourish. Thank you for listening, and I'm going to pass it back to Rosemary.
Thank you, Emily. It's good to hear about your personal experience in the project. Now, we do want to address some possible challenges that could come from this. Two of the biggest challenges that I can recognize to this approach can come from both the organizations that provide housing and the landlords that we hope to form master lease agreements with in the future. With organizations that are already providing housing to vulnerable parties, they may struggle in adapting to this newer arrangement with a different structure and set of needs. But the work group we want to form is more than likely to resolve this possible issue by building on organizations' comfort and knowledge around master leasing as they acclimate to their new structure of care. The possible issues with landlords are centered mostly around the fact that the vast majority of landlords are profit-focused and will have much more interest in protecting their financial assets rather than housing vulnerable and traumatized people who may have struggles that could affect their land's property value. If a renter is struggling with the effects of their trauma in ways that affects neighbors, the property, or the nearby area, a typical landlord is likely to want that renter out and could even extend that desire for removal to any or every person in the master leasing agreement that landlord is involved with. Possible solutions are to focus on landlords that are less likely to have these issues, like smaller landlords that would host less space and present less of a risk when forming and maintaining agreements, or finding landlords that are expressly not profit motivated. In Tacoma specifically, I and others have interacted with a man named Avery who is building a company called Lotus Affordable Housing, an organization that hopes to supply affordable housing to vulnerable individuals and states openly that issues brought by clients' difficulties in managing their trauma will be a non-issue unless damage to the property is especially hazardous. Forming relationships with property owners like this individual and others focused on housing people out of the universal need for homes instead of their personal profit would be a perfect solution to the issues presented by forming agreements with landlords. After that, I want to hand it over to Emily and V again to talk about the system and the youth benefit that can come about from this.
Thank you, Rosemary. There are many mutual benefits to using this approach. Just using Pfeiffer House as an example, I am one of 6 households who share and rotate tasks like, mowing the lawn, taking the garbage out, things that, every household needs. This saves tenants and the landlord on maintenance costs, I guess, and while also fostering a sense of community and collaboration and teaching independent living skills. Another example is having one of the tenants serve as a resident advocate, or RA, who would coordinate tasks and be there for support when and if needed. I am that person for my building, and it's actually helped me as well with professional development, and really just, I have a lot of connections with those people that will never end, never last forever. This model has just been better for building rapport and promoting youth voice and needs while still ensuring safety.
Got a mic. Thank you. So, one of the biggest benefits, right? Young people get housing. All right. So, according to the National Alliance to End Youth and Young Adult Homelessness, the benefits of master leasing and third-party leasing are massive. This includes giving opportunities to prospective renters deemed at high risk. So, someone without reliable income, with previous evictions or no rental history, criminal histories, which are, what do you expect in an unlivable place with unlivable high cost of living? So, reducing barriers to housing and lowering the cost to house people, including saving money on application fees, credit checks, and more. This allows us more opportunity to decentralize where low-income people live by opening up neighborhoods where they have historically been priced out. Lastly, other benefits include enabling the expansion of shared housing by normalizing split leases and quickly gaining access to hundreds, if not thousands, of units, bringing more people indoors almost immediately. So, to conclude...
That would be me. So, in conclusion, if we create this change, we will see vulnerable people enter into a system that houses them with care, consideration, community, and support, rather than our current system that houses people only for the personal gains of the wealthy property owner. In order to see these positive changes, we want to form a work group focused on improving and expanding master leases. Our goal is to use the lived experience of members who have had histories with the many problems we hope to solve in this effort, allowing the individuals our current housing system failed to build a more supportive system for future renters. Thank you, everybody. We really appreciate you all meeting with us today and giving us the opportunity to express the change that we want to see in the world. It's very appreciated.
Okay, we will begin the Q&A session for the Tacoma chapter. We can start on that side.
Thank you all for your presentation. That is awesome. The proposals so well thought out and so critical. And I want to thank you, Emily, for sharing your personal experience. I have I guess maybe an offer and an ask. On the offer side, the Office of Homeless Youth funds 2 housing programs for young adults. What we have seen in that program, and we have organizations all across the state that provide young adult housing, is that some of them are quite experienced with master leasing. Others are curious but need some support in learning how to build those relationships with landlords and how to operate the model. And I think for some, it may not even really be on their radar. So I'd love to leverage that experience from organizations to the work group and also help to educate and inform our service providers. And the ask is, can we join your work group? I'd love to join the work group and bring members of our team as well. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Please. And really quickly, I just have a couple of announcements. So when we're all walking to the bathrooms or outside, to be mindful, we have a couple of our babies sleeping there. So we have childcare out there. Also, if you all could avoid the courtyard for a little bit, we do have a young person who is going through crisis right now. So it is being handled, but if we could avoid the courtyard, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. I think this is a great presentation. I mean, houselessness, if we can address it, absolutely. So my questions are, would there be an age limit? Okay. And go ahead.
I can.
Okay. And so I just want to understand your house that you live in. the supportive services are offered through the landlord, or is that an outside agency that comes in?
So to answer your first question, yes, there would be an age limit. So I guess the way it works for me is it is 18 to 24. I guess she hasn't had emancipated youth, but she's open to it. My landlord, I've had conversations. She met with us a few weeks ago to kind of talk about her experience. She has like 20 years of in Port Townsend, I guess, trying to end homelessness and with master leases and host homes and stuff. But basically hers is 18 to 24 to get in. You can, for her model, it's kind of loose, but there's a year lease automatically, and you have the opportunity to renew again. And then the idea is to be working with, the caseworker from the provider, which in our community is Olympic Community Action Programs. So everyone there has a caseworker, plus basically works with her and all the connections she can. She's kind of a resource hub and knows like everyone in the community. So she's connected us to a licensed mental health counselor, to financial counselor, all free, all individualized. And so the idea isn't to kick people out if they age like to 26, because I'm 26 and I just renewed for the third year. It's not ideal. She would like to get it, ideal to get people moved into more, not permanent, stable housing, but more permanent housing where they don't have to leave, or to buy a house or a bigger place because it's not the biggest unit. But she's not going to kick anyone out. And especially with doing the resident advocacy that I was doing, I was putting a lot of work into that position and not finding my own housing, and she recognized that. So she was like, we'll pull back, you look for that, and then we're both happy. So ideally, I think it could look like a lot of different ways, age-wise, but I think, not kicking anyone out once they cap an age, but ideally helping them find, I think when it comes down to it, 2 months after I moved in, my caseworker and I started filling out wait list applications for other places. So ideally, yeah. And I think if you need to break your lease too, she's cool with that. Like if you found a great place, she's no fee. She's like, please, by all means.
So does she hold the master lease, or does an outside entity? Okay.
So OLICAP, the Continuum of Care, hold the lease, or owns the property. They were doing something previously with it, and I guess Kelly, my landlord, went up to them and was like, look, this is my proposed stuff, this is the funding I have, and would you lease this to me? And they were like, well, we're not doing anything better with it, sure. And it's kind of an indefinite lease. Like they don't want to have to manage that property, so it's mutually beneficial. She did say in this discussion that we had that the way to find it was way she did is just looking around where the area for abandoned houses, basically knocking on landlords' doors, because there's a lot of elderly folks that live in really big houses out where we are, so that's how she did it. And we get a lot of referrals from agencies as well. But
And I think the work group is a great way to start, and hopefully it'll go a lot quicker than the other work group we had for housing families that are still in dependencies. And so maybe modeling after that, because that plan has come to fruition and is expanding across the state. So that's definitely a conversation I would love to have and support your work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I want to add real quick too, like with our work group, we're moving forward with it, right? So we are going to be very intentional about who we decide to partner with and the landlords that are available. So the outcome can be as kind, respectful. So thank you for your support.
I absolutely love this topic. I feel the lack of it in our own community. I have 11 years of experience in program development, in landlord engagement, in running a continuum of care, and utilizing coordinated entry and leveraging story to make impactful statements. If you think you can use me, then I would love to join your work group.
yes, please.
I just want to share something that I learned and that we have moved forward on in the legislature, and something that proposes is something that you guys could possibly put on your work group plate. We passed funding or legislation this year to remove the word master from things like master bedroom, master I'm not sure what else, but from a awareness of the use of the word master from slavery and things like that. And so just maybe pointing out, and maybe you guys can come up with a new term that we could use more broadly that could be adopted based on more culturally appropriate phraseology.
I absolutely love that. Thank you. Because when it comes down to the definition of master leases, it doesn't really, the definition itself doesn't have supportive services that we're really advocating that need to be there, like the mental health and whatever else might it look like. So thank you.
Thank you. I do have a question, but I love that comment. Yeah, that was great that the legislature did that. Okay, you may have said this, but I'm curious how a person would find out about this kind of housing, and does it have to go through coordinated entry?
That's a great question. So when it comes to, so for me, I did go through coordinated entry, but I didn't find, I was connected through my caseworker after 2 years to the program. So the COC isn't the only place that refers. She takes them they could do self-referrals. A parent can refer them, a sister, a friend, a teacher, someone, just someone that knows them. It's a pretty open referral process. Could you repeat your question? I'm sorry. Perfect. So that was one of the things that my landlord was, now it's kind of easy because there's a website and she opened a coffee house down the street and kind of is like creating a reputation in our community. So a lot of people in our community know about it. I think it could look a lot of different ways. Referral system, for sure. I think she could be better at like advertising, like for instance, in a bigger community, maybe social media, like things like that. But I think in our small town, she has a lot of referrals just with the people that refer young people. It's a wait list basically. So all units are taken and there is like several people on the wait list, and basically just prioritization. To answer your question about coordinated entry, no, they do not. If they can pay or have funding elsewhere, if they would like assistance with funding, we do help them with coordinated entry, but it's not like they need to go through coordinated entry before they can even talk to her. I've seen people be like referred to the place, the Pfeiffer House, and then referred to OLICAB to help with that in that. So it's kind of either way, but essentially we would love to have them go through coordinated entry so we can help pay them, help pay their rent while they work on stuff.
I'm going to speak on that a little bit too. I think there's a lot of pros and cons to our coordinated entry system. And I think that there are a lot of negatives that could come from only having these opportunities go through the coordinated entry system, especially disappropriate or disproportionate access. So I think that that's something that we would definitely work on within this work group and find out a way to do it equitably so that everybody had the same access to these opportunities and that they were true opportunities for all and not just chances.
So with that, we will be wrapping up this portion of the Q&A. Again, I will walk around with note cards. I walk around and collect note cards. Yes, V?
For those that want to support, thank you again. Could you guys write down your contact on the note cards? Could you guys write down? I got shy. Can you guys write down your contact information on the note cards, and we would love to reach out after. Thank you.
Personal phone numbers, please. No, I'm kidding.
Thank you to the Tacoma chapter.
Awesome job. Appreciate it. Nice. Good job.
Thank you, Tacoma chapter, and I'm here to introduce the Northern chapter now. Northern chapter, which includes Wickham, Skagit. Did I even say that right? Skagit. I am so sorry. I really apologize to the Native people and Snohomish counties.
Hello, we're the Northern Chapter. My name is Ari. I use she, her pronouns.
My name is Beth. My pronouns are they, she.
My name's Barrett. I use he, him pronouns.
My name is Kayla, and I go by she, they.
My name's Conifer, and I use they, them pronouns.
My name is Ender, and I go by they, he pronouns.
Thanks for the second microphone.
All right. Youth homelessness is extensive and growing statewide. Homeless youth who have not been in foster care are underserved. They are not proactively provided with a case manager and are unaware or unable to access the systems of support that are available. Reactive case management and social services are not enough and will always fail to identify and serve all youth in danger and at risk. Quantitative data misses many homeless youth and fails to recognize the nuances essential to serving this population equitably. Among LGBTQ youth especially, houselessness in Washington is growing at an unprecedented rate. Access to autonomy-affirming services is massively lacking. Folks with lived experience are experts, yet they are underrepresented in case management, service, and policy-making positions. Disproportionality in these positions is reflected in inequitable, even unsafe practices, services, and policy. I was released from hospitals into an unstable living situation upwards of 15 times. I grew up in poverty in Bay Area, California, mostly, until we moved to a rural town in Washington in hopes of a lower cost of living and food banks with more to offer. Nevertheless, poverty persisted, abuse persisted, violence persisted. By 10 years old, I was parenting 5 younger siblings. 3 of them, my mom's girlfriend's children, were removed by Child Protective Services. As the scapegoat, I spent long periods in inpatient in my teen years, which came with its own slew of trauma. There were many times CPS should have intervened. Until recently, the narrative I held around foster care was shaped by my abuser. Most of the time, we lied to protect each other and our family when they'd show up. But there were too many times we sought help and were not heard or believed. Moving to Washington was also a strategy to keep us powerless. To quote a specific narrative I was fed, Washington law regards children much more like property than California. I do not wish to discount the trauma of being put into care with this story, but instead highlight the context for the narratives, beliefs, and access I had as a homeless young adult. I felt voiceless, powerless, vulnerable, alone, guilty, confused, and worthless for a long time. At 13, I was baptized Mormon. I only recently came to understand the full weight of which churches preying on people in poverty had on this after years of church hopping, seemingly determined only by the wind. So there I was, Mormon, briefly a freshman at a terrible high school, and utterly confused about maybe being gay. Spoiler alert, yes, very much. My autonomy was chronically assaulted in more ways than I can begin to describe, and not once was I made aware of my rights as a human being under 18. I was made to believe a lot of lies surrounding this as a result. I cannot stress enough the essential nature of restoring youth personhood to their safety. By 17, I was released from long-term care into a relative's home with a plan of living in a car after no one would hear me when I spoke about what I wanted and where I was safe. The only case management I received was brief and for psychiatric stability. In addition to not being aware of any safe and non-judgmental resources, I felt responsible for the decisions that led me to not knowing where I would sleep. It was the only choice that gave me choices. Stigma, misinformation, and traumatic system experiences barred me from accessing any help. I found myself often in violent and predatory situations, sometimes with men and sometimes with medical insurance companies. Now I have gratitude for the younger me for avenging her autonomy, but I still hold rage about the ways that I was failed and hurt. In fact, I am only just getting to face it unafraid. You'd be hard-pressed to get me to admit to anger at 18. My sense of justice, though, was at my core. With a bachelor's degree in hand, I became a case manager for youth and young adults. I want to be the person I needed. This work alone is not enough. Knowing it is cheaper to end homelessness than it is to allow it to go on, while we allow businesses to spend money on anti-homeless and hostile architecture, brings me rage. As does knowing we have the science needed to understand addiction and to heal it, and yet we continue to enslave drug offenders. Or that despite our in-depth understanding of generational trauma, family services are reactive instead of proactive, and generally traumatic themselves. The list goes on. I don't know how or why we haven't accessed our abundance of resources to end these things, and I don't know how to say politely that every day drastic change is not made is a day we have been failed by those gatekeeping positions of power, our power as people. To quote Christina Michelle Martins of Bellingham City Council and mayor candidate, I believe anything that isn't innate can be changed. If it is our voices that are missing from the conversation, we are here and more than willing to propose solutions. People with lived experience become experts on society, community, and systemic issues to survive. We need the opportunity and awareness. We need the removal of barriers, and we need to be heard meaningfully. Thank you.
We have a multi-step solution that starts with reinstating quarterly meetings with the Office of Homeless Youth. These meetings will center lived expertise and cultivate community. With this collaborative space in place, the first thing we would like to work on is developing 2 surveys, one for young people experiencing homelessness and the other for the organizations serving them. These surveys will collect comprehensive and qualitative data around the needs of young people, the struggles they've had around accessing resources, and what has worked for them. The organization's survey will identify what needs to be in place for them to provide stable and proactive casework. The survey will be the first step of a 5-year plan to assure that every young person experiencing homelessness will have access to a caseworker through the age of 25 by the end of 2028. Thank you.
This is a map displaying homeless young people who are receiving services in red and the total number of young people in blue. Although this is from 2016, we feel it is still helpful to get an idea of populations around the state. To contrast the infographic, we have current information from the Department of Commerce about available resources per county. Some notable spots are Grant and Adams County, which have no resources available, and Stevens, where there's only one provider that is available and they only offer support services under the Youth Housing Demonstration Project. Location isn't the only barrier homeless people are facing. It is commonly known at this point that people of color face disproportionate outcomes compared to their white counterparts. This data is important to keep in mind with our ask. Imagine being a young person in one of these counties and trying to figure out how to escape homelessness alone, despite compounding circumstances. We need help.
We struggled to identify barriers within our ask. The initial cost will be to develop the survey, along with ensuring all young people participating in the creation and submissions of the survey are properly financially compensated.
Involving and representing youth through regular meetings and outreach will provide an opportunity for them to engage with their community meaningfully. Young people having more community engagement will give them more of a voice and more overall power regarding their future and autonomy. Having better supports, such as well-trained caseworkers, will help create more equitable outcomes and close gaps in disproportionality.
We are excited to continue to work with the OHY and lead by example, demonstrating what effective and genuine youth empowerment looks like. We are hopeful that the other entities follow suit. Thank you for your time.
So we will begin the Q&A session for the Northern chapter now. Charles.
Thank you all for your presentation and for highlighting a lot of the barriers, gaps, and other just fragmentation and deficits of our lack of a system at all for serving youth experiencing homelessness. Just want to say you have my commitment that we would love to have the quarterly meetings again with you all. We really got a lot of value from that, and it has influenced a lot of our work. In fact, I think we have a survey that was developed in partnership with Mockingbird Youth and other young folks that I think we could pick back up and reassess and figure out kind of how to implement that. I think we got kind of stuck at we had the survey, but then we got stuck at how to actually implement it and get it out there. But anyway, I just want to thank you all, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you all for really a well thought out discussion about a problem that I'll admit I know little about how it's possible to coordinate some of the care. So my question really appeals to your lived experience and the idea behind this long-term case manager. So if someone under 18 is experiencing homelessness and reaches out to services, does that switch from one department to another department upon the age of 18? Does it change if you have to leave the county? Maybe you could give us some better understanding of what some of the real challenges are in trying to keep on a path forward for someone who starts experiencing homelessness, maybe at the age of 12 or 13, and then now we're at 18 or 19.
We deeply appreciate your question, and we are hoping that the answer to that question would come from the surveys. One of the big seeds that planted this idea was the identification of the disproportionality and difference for services between young people who have experienced foster care and young people who are homeless who have not been through state dependency. Casework being one of the biggest factors among these differences, and having someone who is there, whether you access them or not, is still there to assist you in finding these resources and accessing them, is completely absent for young folks. And most of the state and a lot of the places that do provide casework, it is really dependent on the organization themselves to identify how it's done and through what means and what it looks like and all that. So the goal of this survey, through working with OHY, is to create really to identify the organizations throughout the state that are doing a great job, and also the ones maybe not so much, and then figure out a way to create a mandated casework position for these organizations serving young people experiencing homelessness, and create guidelines of what that looks like, how to do it, and really elevate all the things that are working from the successful organizations, and identify the things that maybe aren't working so much. And also, really importantly, something that I would like to push for around this is making sure that these caseworker positions are prioritized to be hiring lived experts, people of color and different cultural identities, as well as paying them a living wage. It is insane to me that we have all these people doing such emotionally difficult work that are unable to buy a house. Like, that is unacceptable, and I think that's going to be a big part in this survey. And in regards to the portion of talking to the caseworkers, figuring out what they need to do their job successfully, because otherwise the support is going to fall down and we are going to continue to fail these young people.
Thank you so much. This was, I mean, all of these presentations have been so amazing. And I think I keep hearing, and I completely support the idea that we need to compensate young people for being part of the solution. As we ask for their opinions, we want them involved. I guess this might be for the legislators, that as agencies, so I work for the courts. We're not under the same requirements of the executive agencies, but we're trying to figure out what we do for engaging, supporting, and paying people with lived expertise to be part of the solutions for the court system. And so I know that the Governor's Office of Equity has been doing a lot of work around this, but I think that our budgets don't match that yet, and that we need to be thinking about how we incorporate that into our programs, into the budgets that come through, because this work should not only be paying someone for contributing to a survey, but building their professional capacities and their expertise so that they can take on those jobs later, and that we need to build in that ability to do that work as agencies as well. So thank you for continuing to keep that front and center.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I would just follow up that sounds like a great budget ask from the courts for this coming year, because we've done that in the legislature, that we are paying for lived experience. So that sounds, again, like a wonderful budget request coming from the courts.
Got one over here. I have a question. Yes, behind you, Ross.
So, I'm always obsessed with the details of how these things work, right? It's sort of my nature. Who do all these caseworkers work for? Do they work for the state? Do they work for hundreds of small nonprofits? Do they work for city governments? Like all of that? Just like one particular, do you have a thinking?
All of that. So
Okay.
nonprofits, state, all of that. Caseworkers in general doing really important work for our society and helping people. Number one, people with lived experience are disproportionately underrepresented in that. And the work is pretty much like systemically underpaid, and it's burnt out. People are burnt out and overworked, and their caseloads are so high that the quality of service as well is not there.
I think part of the goal will also be in identifying these small nonprofit organizations that are doing well, creative, intensive incentives for them to provide whatever this mandated casework looks like. So my thought process about this the state would create legislature of this is what this looks like, and then OHY, being the body they are and being responsible for funding these organizations, you must meet X bar, you must do X thing and have this position in order to receive funding or even to apply for it.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we are at time for the Q&A session for the Northern region. Again, if you have any additional thoughts, questions, please write them down and we'll collect them. Thank you, Northern Chapter.
Yeah, I'll sit here. Can I get all the young people up here, please?
Oh, I gotta do my thing.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Well, never mind. Bunny's gonna do their thing.
Okay, thank you so much, Northern Chapter, for your presentation and for introducing our legacy item for this year, extended foster care, which was worked on by the Olympia Chapter. The Olympia Chapter represents the Peninsula region. I guess. Wait, did I write this right? I guess. Yeah. I mean, that's it. So.
I think you come back up.
Can I get all the young people up here, please? Y'all ready? All right.
I wanted to try to fit on the stage.
You down with EFC?
Yeah, you know me.
I said, are you down with EFC?
Yeah, you know me.
This was the first thing I ever chanted as a fresh member of the Olympia chapter at Youth Advocacy Day. Yeah, you know me. I'm Sabian, and I'm currently the engagement coordinator for our northern region. I want to first acknowledge the absence of youth voice for this presentation, and also show that all of these wonderful people are the people that I'm advocating for and that are advocating for themselves and many others not shown here today. They have all put in tremendous effort, and I could not be more proud of the work. Jesus Christ. More proud to work with and work for such a... I'm going to go up and put this on the table because my hand is shaking so bad. Thank you. All right. I could not be more proud to work with and work for such an amazing group of people. I want to emphasize that young people have heavily participated in this work in the past and this year. And due to outside circumstances, the young people who participated in working on this topic this year were unable to attend Summit. We want to thank them for the work they have done this far and are hopeful that the Olympia chapter will be able to have the capacity and youth voice to carry forward extended foster care for this fall's legislative session. We are asking that the age range of extended foster care be expanded from 21 through the age of 25. According to a report published in May of 2020 from the Washington State Institute for Public Policy, otherwise known as WISIP, quote, compared to non-participants, the average youth participating in EFC was more likely to be employed and have greater earnings. EFC also significantly reduced homelessness, receipt for public assistance, use of medical emergency departments, reduced diagnosis of substance abuse and treatment, and criminal convictions. We also found that EFC reduced the involvement of offspring in the child welfare system, end quote. WISIP also had a benefit cost analysis that found that the EFC program produces $3.95 of lifetime benefits for each dollar invested. Of the total benefit, 40% represents savings and revenue that would accrue to state, local, and federal governments. I don't know about you, but if I could buy $4 for $1, I'd be doing that all day. The last quote I would like to share is from someone I hope all of you know, and I'm sure you do, Jim Theophilus. Jim told me, the only thing wrong with EFC is that it ends at 21, and I have not heard anything more true since. Now, obviously, data is important. So is Jim. And I hope compelling. But most importantly, I would love to share my little sister's story about her experience in extended foster care. She told me that when she first turned 18, her experience with EFC honestly wasn't great. After she turned 18, she got a bunch of packets talking about EFC, but no one really showed her or talked to her about them or helped her access the resources that she had available through this. She felt that the caseworker that she had at the time wasn't interested in working with her because of her age. However, after she turned 19, she was placed under the care of a new caseworker who specifically worked with EFC cases. EFC immediately became life-changing for her. Some of the standout things were simple: help with buying groceries, support in filling out job applications and college applications, scholarships, grants, etc. My sister felt like EFC provided the support that she needed to reach independence. Most importantly, however, EFC was life-saving for her. She was in a highly abusive relationship, and because of the money from EFC and the support of her caseworker, she was able to flee to safety, and within 2 weeks was supported with a down payment for a place of her own. She wanted me to stress that EFC takes work from both sides. It's not the caseworker's role to do things for you, but if you are willing to do the work, the combination of your caseworker and ILS worker will be there to support you every step of the way. My sister is currently 22 and still receiving ILS benefits. It's so emotional these days, I don't know why. My sister is currently 22 and still receiving ILS benefits, but no longer receiving EFC. She expressed that EFC and ILS have been tremendous help and that she feels far more prepared now than when she was 18. And if EFC got expanded, she would absolutely take advantage of it for as long as possible. My sister's story with EFC is not unique, and the data shows that. Extended foster care has been overwhelmingly successful. I consider Washington to be a leader in many things around foster care, and EFC is the biggest standout among those. There is not a single coherent argument against the age expansion of EFC. If the state can afford RCW 4343, which is a nearly $73 million increase to the state patrol budget, we can afford to support future generations through extended foster care. I also want to acknowledge that there will be other organizations advocating for improvements to EFC this session, which we will also support. Let's continue to lead and set an example, not just for our country, but for the world, and how we can ensure our current and future generations are given an opportunity for success. I want to urge all of you to set a goal to pass every single piece of EFC legislation this session. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we'll begin the question and answer period for EFC from the Olympia chapter.
I just have one question. Sabian, was that a mic drop or what?
I tried. I don't know.
Thank
So thank you for the call out for your sister's second caseworker. I'm glad that we have a positive experience there. The expansion of the population we serve in juvenile rehab to 25 has been different than just serving more kids, more young people. It turns out that 25-year-olds are like really different than 14-year-olds. And I'm betting that's true in extended foster care too. And it would be interesting as you think through the practical implications, and we'll be helping think through the practical implications from the department, is what's the different set of services that someone who's 24 needs compared to someone who's 19? And to help the agency think about that, because none of us are 19 anymore. I'm certainly not. You can see the bald spot. It's terrible, right? You can see the bald spot. You can probably see it from up there, right? But how do we, help us think about that, like creating a graduated set of help for the caseworkers to provide something that's meaningful and useful and not irritating at these older age levels. I just think it's different. And I don't know how it's different, but it's going to be different.
Yeah, absolutely. And fortunately, all of these caseworkers have massive caseloads of young people that they can ask what their needs are. I think the biggest part of this is needs are individual. I don't know what Rosemary needs versus what V needs versus Caitlin or anyone else here, because they're all living their own experience in different lives. And so I think the biggest job for DCYF to do is to hold that flexibility, be prepared to encounter different needs, and have it set up and talk to your young people. Do you need help with getting housing placed? Do you need help with college? Like all of the things that EFC is currently doing, and this is a separate ask that may come up this year, but also ILS, and I think EFC and ILS in tangent work very well together, and I think expanding ILS is also something you should do. Anyways.
I think improving it significantly is something we should do. I agree.
So ask your young people. Have routine training about your caseworkers, incorporating that as part of their job and reaching out to their young people and asking what they need.
But, Zeba, my young people are up to 21 now.
Well, then expand that.
And so, like, we gotta help people think about what are people gonna need next year, because sometimes if we're used to 19-year-olds, we don't know how to expect what a 23-year-old needs. And I'm totally with you on you guys are all unique, and we actually have to have youth voice in figuring out what is the right thing, and this is not a template solution. But there might be new categories that you collectively could help us think about and the people behind you are nodding. So
I'm also nodding.
Okay.
I agree.
So help us think about what's the space look like, and then also how do we help make it be more appropriately individualistic, but not randomly individualistic.
Something that I've identified in my current role as the Northern Engagement Coordinator, and something that I've talked to some folks about this in this room, is Mockingbird really spearheading youth advocacy in the first place has created a new dynamic of young people like myself who have aged out. For example, I'm no longer eligible to be a young person for Mockingbird, but there's all kinds of people like me who have done this now for 10 years and grew up doing youth advocacy and working on these systems, and now would be alumni of them. And I think accessing folks like me to help create those roles, as well as the young people currently, I guess what I'm trying to say is you should reach out to the people that have already aged out of EFC recently and ask them what they need, because those people, especially as people who've recently left the system, are currently combating their needs every day. So I assume there's some kind of docket of folks that you have and information of people that have reached out, and I would really specifically reach out to them and try to employ them and give them opportunities to help you build this, along with the youth voices here today.
I would also say, Ross, in conjunction to that, we need more time. Young people need more time. 19, 21, that's not enough time. Our young people, we recognize that there's wage gaps. We recognize that there's low income, high income earners. We need our young people to have access to resources for a longer period of time. And I think that the adults in the room, we need to, quite frankly, we need to be honest with ourselves and say, we're not doing enough. And we need a longer road. We need a longer roadway, a runway for our young people. Our young people are sitting here and they're asking.
Look at Representative Callan. It's the answer who could.
No, absolutely. I just wanted to touch on this because you're asking the question as what do we need? We need more time. Okay.
Just to echo that, person-centered care is a best practice, and it's evidence-based, and it's always going to change. This is not something that you're going to be able to plot point. It's something that evolves over time, depending on COVID, threw everything on its head for everybody. And we have entire populations that were isolated and marginalized further than they already were. The technological gap was screaming loud during that period of time, and everybody's exhausted. And I think at this point in time, we have a unique ability with these young minds to really tap into their authority on their lived experience to create something phenomenal for themselves.
Hi. Is there some thought about maybe collaboration work with different funders or just advocacy work? What we've seen is young people who are enrolled in EFC and receiving EFC financial benefits, when they do end up in a situation where they need to, live or participate in different housing structures or housing programs, that they have to unenroll in their EFC, which is it doesn't benefit the young person at all. And so is there a thought of advocacy on that kind of realm or that side of things as well?
That's not something, to my knowledge, that I would imagine we've considered, but it's not something I know about. However, I would love to speak to those organizations and get rid of those boundaries.
Just one quick, this probably isn't all housing programs, but a couple years ago, legislation passed to ensure that young people who are in extended foster care are eligible for the independent youth housing program, which serves 18 through 24-year-olds, and that was huge in terms of opening up access for young people.
I do also want to say, I don't understand what the qualm is with this whole idea of double dipping. Who cares? Youth shouldn't need to choose one service. If there's things available to support them, we should be fully embracing them and supporting them as much as possible.
Thank you. So we'll take one more question, and then we're going to end this period.
Thank you. Now I'm curious of all the times you would have to unenroll. That just doesn't even equate in my head. I just don't understand why you would have to unenroll from EFC.
I am also curious.
Thank you. Well, I just want to say I'm so grateful to you all for elevating the issue of extended foster care. I think it is one of the hallmark features of the value of the Mockingbird Society, and it came from young people. It came from my experience of going to graduation parties and young people hearing that night that because they were 18 a week ago and now they got their GED or high school diploma, they were literally homeless or at least out of foster care that day. That day. And it was young people who expressed how outrageous that was, that they had, and I'm guilty of this, I talked to young people who were 18, and I had to say, you might want to think twice about getting that high school diploma or GED, because while my kid's going to get, I didn't have kids then, but while kids from intact families get a party for that GED or high school diploma, you're going to lose your housing. So we had counselors, teachers, foster parents, social workers coaching young people to underachieve in order to keep their housing. That is what structural racism is about. That is an example where young people of color were being told, all young people, but disproportionately young people of color, told to delay your high school diploma so that you can keep safe housing. And it was one of the few times that I was threatened to be kicked out of legislator's office for suggesting that the state take responsibility for young people over 18. I do want to say then Representative Hunter was the champion of extended foster care, as well as many other legislators. And now we are ready. Again, thank you to Mockingbird, but we are ready for extended foster care 2.0 because of all of the great data and research we have. As I said at one of the hearings, Grandma could have told us that in the first place. If you provide young people with the support they need to survive, then they will thrive. But when they're stuck trying to figure out how to live and get safe housing, of course they're going to underachieve in some of the, like college and other workforce. So this is the year. Thank you to Charles for his leadership, but it's time that the state extend this program. It's going to be expensive because it's all state dollars. The federal government will not help, but the data's pretty clear. We're saving money by not having and opening up more shelters, but instead putting young people's rear end in college and other career pathways.
Thank you.
Wow. Oh, thank you, Olympia chapter. Next, we have presenting the Central chapter, which includes Yakima, Grant, and Kittis counties.
Thank you. My name is Mira, and I was abused throughout my life. This abuse led me to almost being placed in the foster care system. I didn't know what abuse was at the time, nor that I was facing it, but I knew that, from accounts of family and friends, that foster home would be worse than my current circumstances, which forced me to stay quiet in fear of being in a system that would take away my autonomy and future.
Hello, everyone. My name is Fabio. I was born overseas like my father when we were Oconus. I've served my time in the military service in the United States Army. When I got back home, I found out both my brothers were in foster care and my mother was bedridden. My mother has multiple sclerosis, and it's advanced to such a stage that we don't know when she'll pass on. This, coupled with the fact that I wouldn't see my brothers again, took a toll on me. I found myself worried on whether or not they'd be split up. They didn't like the place that they were at, and they told me that they didn't have enough freedoms, and this was frustrating. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary and Fabio, for that. And I want to thank, as well, people from Japan for being here. Let's give them a round of applause. So, my name is Thijs van den Bos, and as you should know, we are from the Central Chapter. I am an abuse survivor. I struggled with abuse from both in and out of foster care. I was couch surfing prior to entering the foster care system, and I was in multiple foster homes, which reminded me of the traumas from the couch surfing once again. And, and with that, you just don't know where your next meal, your next shower would come from, and knowing you would be in a stranger's household. And, and since then I've left the system, and the struggles that I've dealt with then have been lessened because of the help that I have now. And I want to thank the Mockingbird Society for giving me a platform to share my voice. And, well, quite frankly, that's why I'm here today. I'd like to pass it on to Fabio. Oh, sorry. I got this. Sorry. Whoops. I lied. I forgot I'm starting slide 2. So the problem we identified was foster youth not feeling safe or supported in their homes. A lot of times when foster youth are going through abuse, they either, one, have a hard time identifying it was abuse, or two, never knew it was abuse until much later on, including myself. Even though there was a system of random check-ins in place, they rarely happened, and in my case, they never happened. Fabio?
A child deserves to be around parents that they can relate to physically and mentally, not just socially. Sorry. A child should be able to choose what kind of foster parents they want to have, and more importantly, what kind of influence they want to have in their lives. For BIPOC and LGBTQ youths, this is even more important because they represent a part of our population that is underserved.
In our current system, youth are placed anywhere there is a bed with little regard for their personal wishes and desires. Not only do they not choose where they go, but they cannot choose to leave and often have to stay in abusive situations as the process for getting out of that situation is too extensive and they fear retribution. The system takes away almost all autonomy from young people, which isn't right. In order for a young person to thrive and be self-deterministic, they need 3 psychological needs: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Our new proposed system would not only give young people more autonomy, but it would also do much more to ensure the welfare of the young person. The new system that we propose would have 3 checks in place. This slide has these checks in no particular order, since the order may look different depending on where the young person is in the foster care system. The first check would be helping young people identify potential abuse via mandatory classes, since young people may need help determining whether their situation is abusive and or unsafe. The second check would be creating a simpler system in which young people could choose when they leave an unsafe or inadequate living situation without foster parents knowing, so that we can avoid retribution among the youth. The third check would be asking youth which home they'd like to go to. This can include aspects such as location, demographics of parents, values of parents, etc. This would greatly help BIPOC and LGBTQ youth who want to stay connected to a specific culture or who want to live in a queer inclusive household. Research has shown that introducing autonomy to young people at an early age has an entire host of positive effects outside of making them feel safe in foster home. These benefits include improved confidence, self-motivation, increased responsibility, and a developed sense of self. The system would also give young people more stability in their homes, which has been proven to greatly determine other factors later in life, such as loneliness, social competence, popularity among peers, and behavioral characteristics.
Some of the challenges we anticipate as possible rebuttals are the cost of implementation. I say you're shooting yourself in the foot to save $50 down the line. You're sacrificing your future to save money now, when in reality this would end up costing so much more if left untreated. As for logistics, we want quarterly meetings with head executives and directors who can best direct the system to make sure it works through trial and error and problem solving.
So this brings me to the last slide. Once youth are introduced to the foster care system, they don't have a choice whether or not they're okay to leave. CPS and the caseworker or case manager have the responsibility to say whether they're legally able to graduate from the system or not. Without autonomy, the struggles could potentially lead to substance abuse and other mental health struggles. Therefore, the youth should have an opinion to describe a reasonable home that would be beneficial and suitable for their safety.
It's imperative that we give foster children the autonomy to choose where they want to live. The likelihood that foster children becoming homeless is vastly increased if they cannot nor will not stay in the household they're in. Cities would rather deter homeless people from living in popular areas than to deal with the root cause of homelessness, losing hundreds of thousands of dollars in the process.
We ask that you help us implement this 3-check system into foster care statewide so foster youth can feel safe in their homes and we can give young people more autonomy over their own lives. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we will be opening up the question and answer period for the Central Chapter's presentation.
Woo! That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about some freedom up in here. That's what I'm talking about. I think this is a fantastic idea. I'm just on fire because this is a choice that I have to pick, like my neighborhood, the schools, all these things. You know, if this was a service, right, that you were excited, like, woo, I want to go to foster care. Oh, yeah, I can't believe all the stuff that we're going to get. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to have people take care of me. I'm going to have people love me, and I'm going to get access to all this stuff. Right, I'm just shocked. You know, I didn't go through this system, but I'm shocked at the lack of the ability to be able to choose where I want to live and to be able to freely say that I don't feel safe here and I need another place to go. So I really appreciate your bravery for sharing your stories. That's just incredible. I'm not sure that I could do that. And so I'm really appreciative of the things that you're saying, and I would want to help you however I could, even though it's not my job description or anything like that, to do anything on this whatsoever. But, I guess I'm trying to volunteer. Thank you, Larry.
The Office of Civil Legal Aid is in the House, and they have the responsibility for representing young people. And that is an expanding area of the law, and that is what I was trained as a youth attorney. That is what we do. And so the role for the youth attorney here is extremely important. And I think I would encourage you to talk with the Office of Civil Legal Aid. Bailey Zedek is here, and make sure that the training that happens for those attorneys, the understanding of their role and the expectation that they should be doing all three of these check marks with you every single time they meet with you if you're a young person and you have an attorney. And if you're not getting that met, where do you go for that? Because that's their job. And we don't have them everywhere yet. The legislature has provided for that to be phased in. But I think that that's really, really critical to understand that as a resource. It may not be everything that you guys are looking for, but I just want to make sure that that is that's understood, because that's truly, truly what they're there for.
Thank you. We would absolutely love that contact information. Sounds like an amazing resource. Thank you.
I was going to ask. Well, look no further, my friends. I'm Bailey Zedek. I'm the Children's Representation Program Manager at the Office of Civil Legal Aid. And just to echo the comments that Kelly made, that's exactly what was going through my mind when I'm looking at this checklist. I'm thinking these are all things that youth attorneys should be doing for their young, for their clients. And I would just be so happy to talk more with you all about kind of your vision and where this. I mean, it might not address all of it, right? But like where an attorney for a youth can be meeting some of the needs here. So, thank you.
Thank you, and we would definitely look forward to hearing from you.
Yeah.
One thing, we also train judges, and so we will be making sure, working with OCLA as they roll out, making sure that judicial officers understand the role of a youth attorney, because in some counties that's going to be a pretty new position, and probably the entire system, but definitely judicial officers understanding that is the role of an attorney, to bring a young person's voice. We want young people in the courtroom whenever they're comfortable and able to be there, but their attorney also speaks for them as well. So some of that is helping our court system to get used to that role. And so we would love to work with you all as well, and with OCLA, to think about how we can share that with judicial officers and make sure that space is available in the court setting as well.
So we would like to include not only head executives and directors, but also DCYF, fostering agencies, defense attorneys that represent young people, CASA, and the International Foster Care Alliance. Any other questions?
It's not a question, it's a statement, but foster care agencies would love to meet with you, so I'm happy to give my contact information and be happy to help.
Awesome.
I just can't help but hear a common theme here. the youth voice needs to be heard. It needs to be elevated and then heard. And then the resources and the support around that to help you make those decisions before adulthood. And it's like there's one contradictory aisle to another contradictory aisle where you don't have a choice, you can't make a decision, all of a sudden you're forced into adulthood and you need to make these decisions. Am I hearing that right?
That is correct. The
Okay,
squiggly
thank you.
wheel. I think it's called a creaky wheel. Any other questions? I have a whole list of paper.
No, thank you. I want to build on that comment by just saying a thought that has that keeps coming up in my mind as I'm listening to these amazing presentations, because we talk about lived experience, and all the representatives here from different state agencies or the courts. I'm part of the courts. We all make decisions based on lived experience, which is the experience of making decisions about people in whose shoes we have never walked. And so hearing your expertise is what's really important, and having us not just hear that and then go into some room and make decisions, but really changing the structures in which those decisions are made. So I just, that's such a great thing about Mockingbird and about the work that you're doing, and I just really, really value that. Thank you.
I appreciate your comment, and I would just like to add that, like I said in my statement, it was right here, I believe, on. You can hear me all right, right? Yeah. Okay. So on slide number 5 that I started, that youth and young adults abuse substance and alcohol and stuff like that. I just want to mention that July 24th is my 2-month sobriety. From all 3: alcohol, marijuana, and nicotine use. So, I'm sorry, Mom, if you're watching this. She never knew that. She's gonna kick my ass when I get home. But, oh well. But no, it's a blessing to be a part of Mockingbird, and, for these reasons. And, it took a lot of guts to say that.
So that is time for the central chapter. So we're going to go off agenda just a teensy bit. That was the last chapter because our Eastern chapter has to catch their flight back to Spokane. So before they head off to the airport, we wanted to invite all of the youth and young adults, Mockingbird staff up here for a second for a group photo, and then we'll do closing remarks and closing speeches.
Yes, even though it's supposed to be on the entire time.
That's okay.
It still has to be used after this too. It's on.
Thank you, everybody. And thank you to the Spokane chapter. And I'm going to hand it back over to our MCs, and we're going to close out the program.
Other side.
There you go, Bunny, whenever you're ready.
Thank you so much. Great speech.
If everybody could please take a seat. We're not finished. We have to do our closing remarks. But we're close, I promise. Yeah. Okay, whatever you're ready.
Thank you so much, Central Chapter, and all the other chapters that presented today. It's great to see your confidence flourish and how much you have all stood up and fought for the topics we are advocating for. We have closing remarks from our advisor groups next. Now welcome Secretary Ross Hunter from the Commission, and after we will have Vice Chair Gage Spicer from the Office of Homeless Youth, and end it off with closing remarks from Charles Smith from the Mockingbird Public Policy Director.
Thank you. So I think I'll just use this one, though I do have a hard time standing still for it. Thank you all for being here and for listening to these incredibly powerful voices. I wanted to go the closing remarks and have Justice Madsen do the opening remarks because one, I didn't have to write it in advance, and two, I got to listen to everything and reflect and try and distill what's the experience. I mean, what's the message? And there's a through line that runs through everything you heard today. And thank you, Jim, for calling out the work that we did in the legislature in the olden days when I was there before I went into my recovery. And I am 7 years in recovery from being an elected official now. Mockingbird has a unique power. You are powerful in your voice. In my past, before I became a bureaucrat, I was in the legislature and I had a lot to do with school funding, but also with the whole budget process. And I just remember almost every year having young people from Mockingbird. One, I looked forward to it. The most powerful one I remember the extended foster care work. It took us years to get through all of the different stages of the federal bill. And we had a split legislature then, and it required a lot of political work. But that wasn't the most powerful one. The most powerful one was having young people in my office tell me how important it was for them to be connected to their sister or their brother or their sibling, and how hard it was to do that in foster care. And I thought back on the fights I used to have with my sister and how I would miss them tremendously. She just turned 59 day before yesterday, so we don't really have fights anymore, my little sister. And so on the one hand, your voice is really powerful. You changed legislation. Big. Like that change was not a big piece of legislation. The extended foster care is real money, right? It's tens of millions of dollars. It was a lot of money at the time. And Jim's right, it'll be hard if it's 100% state. That's one end of the power. You can change the world, and you should. Like, please do. Please make my life uncomfortable. I have researchers who work for me, and I give a talk to them every year, and the thing I say to them is that their job is to embarrass me in public, that we're not doing the right thing, that this story I'm trying to tell, the numbers just don't back it up, and then I have to go back and fix the facts. I have to change the world. You have that same power. You can rub people's nose in what doesn't work for real people, and that's important. And I have to stop. But the last thing I want to say about the through line here, you need to wave that sign bigger or something, is you're telling us today that we need to listen to you about decisions that matter to you throughout the whole system. I hear you. Let's see if we can make some change to match that. Keep beating on us. Thank you.
Gage Spicer from the Office of Homeless Youth also had to get on the same flight as our Spokane chapter. So in place, Jim Theophilus will be doing closing remarks.
Black Lives Matter. My name is Jim Theophilus, and I am the proud founder of the Mockingbird Society. Founder, one of my favorite F words, not my very favorite, but one of them. And I just want to start by saying again, let's give another round of applause to the amazing young people who showed their courage. Washington State is a special, special place. I mean, how many other places do we have a dedicated Office of Homeless Youth with an amazing leader like Kim Justice? How many other states could bring together legislators, Supreme Court justice, philanthropy, to listen to young people? That is a very special thing. And I also heard some themes today. Young people want schools that serve all children and youth. They want to pick where they live and who they family with. Mockingbird family model. They want to be welcomed back to the community after they show the courage to go inpatient and address the same things that the adults in their life are saying. You need to take your meds. You need to quit this. They go get that treatment. They need to be welcomed back into the community. James Baldwin said, "For these are all our children, and we will profit by or pay for whatever they become." Yes, extending extended foster care to age 25, that will cost money. It'll cost a heck of a lot more if we don't do it. We have workforce shortages in every sector of our workforce. And yet, we are turning our backs on leaders that can take those jobs, be the next legislators, the next Supreme Court justice. We need to invest in them now. So yes, Washington is a special place, and in my view, and I've been drinking my own Kool-Aid a long time, but in my view, Washington's even more special with a dedicated organization like the Mockingbird Society. So I want to say thank you to Natalie and all the Mockingbird staff. This is a ton of work to pull this off. So I think we should give all of them another round of applause as well. The staff, the board of directors, the volunteers. So I close by one of my favorite proverbs, African proverb. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So I say we go together, and I say we follow the young people. Thank you.
My name is Charles Smith. I am the Public Policy and Advocacy Director for the Mockingbird Society. Thank you, Jimmy T. I also want to say thank you to OHY, to our commission, and to our leaders throughout the state of Washington. Larry Jefferson is my old executive director with the Washington State Office of Public Defense. Thank you for being here. I want to give a special shout out to our young people. I've watched you all. I've only been with Mockingbird Society for a little over a month, but I've watched you all work tirelessly on your presentations. The dedication, your commitment to excellence, your pursuit of justice, it's admirable. And truly, I'm humbled to be in this space. I learn every day when I walk in through the doors of the Mockingbird Society. Our young people, you all are brilliant. Brilliant. I want the adults, the professionals in the room, to understand one thing. We need to continue to create a space so that the experts, our young people, their voices are being lifted. And we need to take heed to their commentary. It is important work. It's heavy lifting. Every young person in here, I applaud you. Let's give them a round of applause. Yeah, thank you, Larry. Larry Jefferson, folks. Again, just thank you all for being here, our audience. We have a lot of work to do, young people. What you're going to get out of me is commitment. You're going to get dedication, hard work. We are going to confront injustices. We are going to, as Ross Hunter said, make them uncomfortable. Oh, we're going to do that. He asked for it, we'll do it. With that said, I just want to close by saying this is a wrap for this year's Mockingbird Summit 2023. You all can find the celebration out at the front where you all entered, and you can also receive your validation parking tickets out back as well. Thank you all. Mic drop.